Welcome back to another episode of the Frustrated CEO podcast. We're so glad that you joined us today. My name is Patrick Lyons. I am one of your co-hosts, and I'm here with my friends and colleagues and partners in crime. First and foremost, Patsy Feeman. Hello, how are you? Welcome back.
I'm quite well and excited for today's guest.
As am I. And then, Leb, I'll welcome you. And if you can contain your pride and excitement, maybe you'll be able to get through introducing today's guest.
Thank you, Patrick. Well, I am very excited to introduce today's guest, Abe Tannenbaum, also affectionately known as Abe. It is a great pleasure. Abe is the co-founder of Grapevine Outdoor. He is a Portland-based, purpose-driven outdoor advertising and billboard company dedicated to using business as a force for good. Abe graduated from Portland State University in somewhere around 2008, and he majored in international business and a minor in marketing and advertising. He then moved to New York City, and he worked for Yelp, both pre-IPO and after the IPO occurred for about 2.5 more years. So after spending 5 years in New York City, Abe traveled to India and Nepal. And when he realized there, one of the things was that he wanted to dedicate himself to making a positive impact in business and in his life. Abe is also an avid pickleball player. You better be on your A game if you're going to play with Abe, although he can modulate and play down. Patsy. He's a really good disc golfer. He's a nature lover. He's a nature lover who cares enough to make his business a B Corp and to sign up with 1% for the planet. So with great pleasure, I introduce Abe Tannenbaum. And to kick us off, let's begin asking you, Abe, to share with our listeners about your time in India and Nepal and how that experience led to returning to Portland and then ultimately to founding Grapevine Outdoor.
Thank you. Thank you for the intro, and good to see you all, and it's a pleasure to be here with you all. So
let's clear something up since both of us have the same last name. I forgot to mention, Abe is my son.
I was wondering. I had a big, long introduction. You left out
They're going to be like, what?
Possibly the most important thing.
So I'm very proud.
Yeah.
Go for it, Abe.
Yeah. On that note, I mean, I've been learning from you all these years about business and leading with heart and purpose. So that's made a big impact on me and my journey. So I graduated. I've always worked in sales since I was about 16 years old, and bounced around a variety of different jobs. And my experience at Yelp was great in many ways, but at the end of the day, partially why I chose to exit that was I just felt a lack of purpose, felt a lack of like making a positive impact with my time, and I didn't know what to do. So I got invited to a trip to India for something purposeful, which was a project that a friend was working on, having to do with human migration patterns due to climate change. And this was still pretty early on in climate change talks. And so it was, I was just learning about that. I hadn't heard that term before at the time. And so anyway, I went there and was working on this project and also just, having this great adventure. And on that trip, we went on this trek to a temple called Kedarnath in the foothills of the Himalayas. And it was an exhausting trek, and but it was an incredibly awakening moment, kind of a spiritual moment, like just the feeling of being there in this thousands of years old temple that was actually hit by a major natural disaster a couple years prior. And that's kind of why we were going up there, to learn more about that and talk to people up there about that. But when I got there, I had this connection feeling that I had been feeling for years, but it was very strong there, where it was just my heart telling me, you have to, in order to make your heart happy, you have to do something that is helping nature and making a positive impact for people and for the planet. And so that just became very clear in that moment. So then I continued the rest of the journey, had an amazing time and also some challenging times. And, sometimes it's not easy traveling to totally different countries and cultures, but all in all, it was really amazing, made a huge impact on me. And then when I came back, I actually didn't know what I was going to do at all. I didn't have a job at the time. I didn't have very much money. And I actually didn't know I was going to move back to Portland. I flew back to San Francisco, met up with my brother. We went to this amazing music festival together, and then we traveled to the Redwoods and up to Oregon. And, I just was glad to be back home and surrounded by nature and with family. Did some odd jobs, but I really didn't want to go get a 9-to-5 and work for another company, because I knew inside I wanted to do something entrepreneurial. So yeah, then I just kind of fell into this business, honestly. I had a friend who was working at a different outdoor advertising company, and I told them, hey, why don't I do some commission-based sales for you? Just kind of get my feet wet, no big commitment, but I like this industry. I learned about it in college, and something that I'm intrigued by, because I'd only done digital ad sales, never done real physical, big billboard type of stuff. And so, yeah, I just, I did some sales for them, closed some big deals, but especially because of what I had learned from my father, I could see quickly inside that company that it was a sinking ship, and that it was going down. And so I told my friend who got me into that, he had a tiny piece of ownership in that. I told him, this is going to fail, and we're actually damaging our reputation just by being associated with it. And so we need to save face. We need to figure out, if we want to stay in this industry, we're going to need to jump ship, start something new, and do it better, and do it in a way that is honest and operate with integrity. And this big situation kind of blew up, where I sold this big campaign to a brewery, and the owner of the company we were working for, the main owner, told us, yeah, I have these locations, you can sell these locations. And then I sold them. And then when all contracted and everything, he goes dark on me, and I'm like, what's going on here? We got to get this going. And then he comes back to me and says, hey, I actually don't have those locations. And so my client, this advertising agency, this was their main big client, this brewery. And they were like furious that they had secured this with me, but then we couldn't execute on it. So I actually figured out who the real owner of those advertising locations was, contacted them, and said, hey, I sold this campaign to this big brewery through this agency. I'm now realizing that I was, deceived, and that we didn't actually have these locations, but you do. And I don't want anything. I just want the client to be happy, because I want to maintain that relationship. So can I just give this to you? Can I just pass it on? And he was like, of course, sure. I'll take that big deal. And so I just did that. And, I just felt like it was the right thing to do. The client wound up being fine with it all. I actually have lunch with them next week. So it's like, we're still okay 7 years later. And the owner of that other company wound up contacting me after we started Grapevine a few months in, and said, hey, I keep thinking about this, and I actually want to pay you a commission on that deal, and you can sell my locations, whenever you want. So we created this whole thing, and that really helped us get started, honestly. But yeah, so we jumped ship from that company, and we had some bargaining chips, because we just knew how they were failing the property owners and owed them all this money. And so we said, hey, why don't we take on some of that debt? Why don't we take on those relationships if we can, if they will work with us? And so that's how we pivoted and started our own company. And that's how we started. It was kind of a crazy little journey.
I haven't even heard all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. But
and obviously there were many moments in there where you could have just hightailed it out of the situation,
sure,
instead of leaning in. So just recognizing what's going on and really having the courage to tell the truth
Mhm.
and manage the conflict. I'd love to learn a little bit more about, what, especially for our readers, what does it take to really lead into those difficult situations?
Yeah, there's always a lot of learning when you're starting something, right? And one of the main things I learned in that, which sounds obvious, but it's just like it's the most important part of our business and our industry, is you have these property owners and you create an agreement with them, and you have good communication and follow through. If you say you're going to, if you have an agreement to pay on time, have good communication about it. And if anything happens, just all about that good communication. Because especially like a lot of property owners, I mean, they do a lot of business and they just want somebody who's honest, who's going to come through and not create a headache for them. They already have enough on their plate. So that was just something that, sounds obvious, but a lot of people drop the ball on that. And that's what the company we were working for was dropping the ball on. And they would just go dark and, not pay. And then you have this furious property owner who's like, I don't have time to track this down. And what are you doing? And so that was a huge lesson that was really important to learn right off the bat, which helped us a lot, because now always we're just like, what can we do to be really solid with our property owners? Because then they give you leads, they buy other buildings, because our business is kind of a commercial real estate business and an advertising platform business. So we deal with like agencies and advertisers, but also commercial property owners.
Makes sense.
So Abe, Grapevine is a B Corp.
Yeah.
For the listener who's not familiar with even today what a B Corp is, can you talk about what that is? Are there requirements to be a B Corp? Who manages, who kind of keeps an eye on those requirements to make sure that the B Corps who say they're going to do them are actually doing them? And talk about the journey of becoming one.
Yeah, and I'll try not to talk too much about it because I've really dove into this world of B Corps, and so there's a lot to discuss, right? But the basics are that certified B corporation, the B stands for benefit, certified benefit corporation, and it's really focused on triple bottom line business. So focusing on people, planet, and profit, and balance and harmony with each other, rather than profit first, which has been, kind of traditional business. And the whole thing is to, design business in a way that helps people and is good for people and is good for the planet in the pursuit of profit. So it's very profit driven, of course, because the more profit you have, the better your company, your employees, and all the people around you and all the things that you want to help with, the better those things do, right? It's all managed by an independent third-party nonprofit called B Lab. So B Lab is the certifying body, and it's actually a very rigorous, pretty challenging certification process, which is like a roughly 200 questionnaire. There's like 200 questions you have to answer. You have to provide supporting documentation and like prove it, for a lot of the questions. So yeah, it's not something that any company can just get. You have to go through this whole process, and it's based on a point system. So there's 200 total points possible. If you get 80 or more, then you can get certified. It's a growing, global business movement. When I jumped in, it was years in, and there was over 2,500 companies. Now I think there's over 4,000 companies. So it's a growing thing. And some of the big names are like Patagonia, Ben and Jerry's. There's a bunch more, but those are two like really big ones. And Patagonia actually started 1% for the planet as well. And those kind of often go in tandem. And if you get B Corp certification and you become a 1% for the planet member, you're called a B1. So we're a B1 company. Yeah, that's kind of the quick summary.
Yeah, well, that's great. I love that you mentioned Patagonia and Ben and Jerry's, because for a listener who hears benefit corporation or benefit company and then thinks or somehow makes the association to nonprofit or to your point, maybe not a focus on profit. Those are two very successful companies.
Yeah.
And I would argue not just successful financially, but if you think about the reputation that those companies have, in particular among millennials and Gen Z, who are the next wave of consumers, right? They're the ones that are, they're the ones, they're buyers, right? They've got money as well. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned those. So, okay, it's 200 questions. It's a lot. It's not an easy thing to do. Why do it?
A couple of reasons. I mean, one is that, if it can be very valuable for your company and very helpful and a lot of great connections. Like it can help your company grow to be in that club or, in that company of other B Corps. Portland actually has the most B Corps out of any city in the world. And that's where our business is. That's where I am. And so there's like these local hubs called B Local. So like B Local PDX. And they get all these B Corps together to network and build friendships. And so, part of it is to just show, hey, we're purpose driven. We want to make a difference. And here's one level of showing you that. And then also it's to network, to build relationships with like-minded people and like-minded organizations. And, it's also showing, I think this will just keep growing, but in order to attract and retain high quality talent that's dedicated to your company, you have to have something that's more than just financial for them to, sink their teeth into, to put their heart into. And so B Corps are showing that, they are attracting people who want to be in it for the long haul and that are dedicated to the mission more than the paycheck, and the money follows,
Yeah.
but people want to make a difference. We have, more access to information than ever before. And a lot of the information we have access to is disheartening. So, people are learning. It's kind of in our faces all the time. There's a lot of challenges in the world. And for me, I feel like, it's not like B Corp is the end all be all. It's still a growing thing and figuring things out. And like, they're not perfect, but it's a step in the right direction. And I feel like, if every company was focused on these things, and whether they get certified or not, if every company was really like focused on operating in these ways, the whole world would be a different place. I mean, I think it would be a better place. And to that point, one more point about the whole B Corp certification thing is any company for free can go on to bcorporation.net and they can go through the whole assessment. They don't even have to really want to become a B Corp, but there's so much you can learn about your company just by doing all these, the assessment, all those questions I was talking about. Like anybody can go in. You can even just go into one category, like community. Be like, okay, here's all these questions on community. Because like when I first did that, before I even like went down the journey of becoming a B Corp, I was learning things like, oh, we could do this and that. And, oh, that's a good idea. I never thought about it that way. So there's a lot you can learn from it. Even there's thousands and thousands of companies that just use the tools and don't actually get certified.
And what was you said, where is that assessment?
bcorporation.net.
B Corporation.
B Lab's website.
Yeah. And is it also my understanding that it's not a one and done? So once you're certified, you have to continue to get recertified. So there's an and ongoing improvement process.
Exactly. And you can't just start a company and become a B Corp. You have to have some track record behind you, because you have to provide data, So we're in our recertification process this year. Actually, we got certified in 2020. Even though we were working with B Corps before then, we got officially certified, and then we're in our recertification process for next year right now.
But the fact that you mentioned Ben and Jerry's suggests, I'm answering a question that I had earlier, suggests you can be an existing business and become a B Corp. It's not like you can only do that when you're forming, right? So a listener who's interested in learning more, that's something they can go out, to your point, they can go to bcorporation.net right now and read through, learn more, go through the assessment.
Sure. To my understanding, at least when we first started our company, because we started working with B Corps from day one, and that's when I learned about all of this and was like, oh, this is the path I want to go down. Like Guayaquil yerba mate, it's the yellow cans of like organic energy drink. They are one of the most incredible, fascinating companies, like all the good that they're doing, all the programs they have a regenerative business model. They're just doing such amazing things. And we started working with them, and they're a B Corp. And I was like, oh, I want to do that. Like, I really respect and appreciate what they're doing. And so, you know, to my understanding, you can't become certified like in the first year of your business. You have to have some track record to pull from, you know. And then also, you know, a lot of companies, especially like if you're a large company and you're already fully operational and you have all the departments and things, like it could be years before you finish that assessment and get it right and get your points up enough. You know, our company is pretty small. And so, you know, even though it was really challenging, we had to get a lot of help to get it done. I mean, it was probably easier than a really big company, you know, so just can take some time, and depends if you have people that can like focus and dedicate and work on that, or if you hire consultants to do that, or, but again, just like, you know, I think the real point behind it all is it's a certification that kind of gives you a label, but anybody who's a CEO can learn from that, or can just operate in a way where it's like, you know, they don't have to get the certification to be doing all these things to help the environment, to help people, to make sure you're treating your employees well to a high standard, to make sure you're helping the community, you're not making a negative impact on the environment, these kind of things, you know. It's that's the real point, is the more CEOs that do that, I think the better off the whole world will be.
Yeah.
So then I'm curious about you. You must have a fair amount of subcontractors or vendors that you work with. How has your being B Corp certified helped you influence those businesses?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for one, just talking about it with them, kind of, you know, planting the seed, and it's really on them if they want to go down that road or not. But we've planted that seed with a lot of different companies, and I think that, you know, they've learned from that, or maybe they're even going for the certification or just learning from the questionnaire. And it's also a part of getting certified is actually evaluating your whole supply chain, all the vendors and subcontractors. Are you working with local people? Are you sourcing from across the country, or are you working with the company down the street? Because that's a totally different, you know, emissions impact. So there's a variety of things. So you evaluate, you know, are you working with minority-owned companies, women-owned companies? You get points for these kind of things, and that's how that works, you know. So we kind of try to, I mean, we'd naturally do that. We want to do that stuff anyway, but it just kind of gives another layer of like focus on it.
Yeah. Abe, you're working in what some people might call an old school industry, right? With a lot of locations already secured by really big billboard kind of companies, and you're doing some things differently. Can you share a little bit about some of the benefits, other than that this is so aligned with your heart and desire, you know, to see the people, planet, and profit piece grow from an industry perspective? Have you seen some advantages by becoming a B Corp, by being a part of 1% for the planet? And other than that, some people have contacted you because they've noticed that about you. But what about the industry itself?
Well, yeah, so it mostly is, you know, big companies own over 90% of all advertising platforms in Portland. We'll just use Portland as an example because that's the only place we operate currently, and that's what we really know. But it's probably, you know, true for the whole country. But yeah, so there's a handful of companies, and really there's 2 companies that own over 90% of all advertising platforms in Portland. And as far as, how has our path and what we're focused on and like what we're dedicated to helped us or benefited us, more so on the client side, that's benefited us.
Okay.
Even currently right now, we have this really huge advertising deal that happens to be a B Corp 1% for the Planet company. And, they're strongly considering multiple of our locations, which they may have anyway, but I think that gives us a little bit of an edge when they compare that with, I can work with this kind of out of state, one of the largest in the world company, or I can work with this local B Corp 1% for the Planet company, who's, I know when we put our money to them, they're going to go do some good. And we also get points on our, on our B Corp certification. So it's like, there's multiple benefits, but also, it's aligned. We're aligned. We're like-minded. We're aligned. And so, that, and it also, I connect with and network with B Corp 1% of the Planet companies, so that, that helps to lead to more deals. Whereas if I was just a huge, conglomerate, you can't really tap into it in the same way. So that's kind of an angle for us with it all. And, it's genuine, but it's also a strategy. And yeah, I mean, it is a very old industry, and it's super challenging to be a new company. And when we first came in, we were told certain things were impossible. And we've actually proven that that's not true. That's just what we were being told. And so we're figuring out, some ways to grow the company. But it is very challenging, and it's kind of like finding a diamond in the rough rather than just putting up a billboard where you want to. It's extremely challenging at this point.
When you talk about the B Corp mentality, it's not just profits; it's people, planet, profits. It's that combination. And then you gave a really useful example, I thought, for a listener again who may be hearing about it for the first time or has heard about it but hasn't really understood it. You talked about using a local sourcing instead of one on the other side of the planet, because that directly impacts emissions and transportation costs and the impact there. What are some of the other ways? So if I'm a listener and I'm I have a business, the chances of us becoming a B Corp, even if we wanted to your point, maybe it's years away, but what are some very practical, can you share some practical things that that you or other B Corp owners do or talk about or implement that a non B Corp CEO could potentially replicate, mirror along the way?
Yeah. I think one thing is to just really take a look at the communities where you operate.
Okay.
So, there's all these different kinds of businesses. So it's hard to say this for just a blanket statement, but in general, the communities that you operate in, what are some things that you can help with? The environment where you do business, or, maybe you're not going to change the environmental impact that you have because you can't right now. How can you help with that instead of just depleting? How can you help regenerate? Like the whole concept of the regenerative business model, which is something I'm learning more about and would love to like actually fully develop, like the Guayaquil Yerba Mate company. Regenerative business model means that, if you're going to cut down trees to make your products, you're going to go plant more trees than you cut down. That's regenerating. And it's not just depleting. So, just kind of having that mindset of what can I do to help the communities that I operate in? Who's struggling? Who needs help? And what can we do as a company to help? And same goes for the environment. What are we doing that's having maybe an impact on the environment? Or even if not, like, what can we do to have a positive impact on the environment? And how can we build that into our business model? So it's not just like, once we make all our money, we'll figure out how much we want to give back. It's kind of like build something into the business model so that as you grow, this thing is benefiting.
That's different. That's a different way of looking at it.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine if all companies were doing these kinds of things, maybe at different levels and stuff, but if it's built into the business model and it doesn't require the owners, the stakeholder, or the shareholders and the owners and the CEOs to make those decisions when they want to, with as much as they want to, like, that's great too, for people who are doing some really positive, good things to give back. But building it into the business model changes it to its formula. It's, grow, and this bit of money goes into this thing that needs help.
Abe, so you're like 5 or 6 years into this, and this is the Frustrated CEO podcast.
A little over 7.
7? Okay. So 7 years into it, maybe a little over 7. Let's be specific. And this is the Frustrated CEO podcast. There have to have been moments of doubt and frustration on the journey, even in actually getting like B Corp certified. And you have a co-founder, right? You have someone that you work closely with who also, is a big part of the success of this business.
For sure.
Can you share with our listeners some of the things that kept you up at night, or some of the things maybe currently that are still, frustrating, and how maybe some insight into how you both deal with that, or how you deal with that? Because I don't know an entrepreneur who's gone 7 years in who hasn't had those moments where, like, I don't know.
Oh, for sure. 100%. It happens even as we've gotten more comfortable as a company, because we're doing better than when we first started, of course. Thank God. But of course, there's frustrations and challenges that rise up all the time. And the entire time, every year, there's different challenges and frustrations. And, one frustration in relation to, inside of our company is that, yes, we have a 50-50 partnership. So it's my business partner and I, 50-50 partnership. We're the two owners. There's a lot of decisions to make all the time, and a lot of things to discuss, a lot of things to keep track of. And, things get stressful. We're doing some pretty big business deals, and there's, a lot on the line and a lot to keep track of. And so we both get stressed out, and then our communication gets pretty fiery, and we butt heads. We're trying to make decisions, and we might not see eye to eye, but we don't have a solid, like, third party to weigh in all the time. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Or we don't have a whole team, and so, we get frustrated, we argue, we struggle sometimes to communicate in a healthy way that's effective. And that's it's a big challenge that we've gotten better and better over the years, but it still surfaces, it still happens, it still comes up to where it just feels terrible for both of us, and we both don't like it. And and then we have to talk through that and try to figure out, well, how can we communicate better? Because at the end of the day, that's really what it boils down to. No matter what the external thing is that's happening, or what challenge we're facing, or what problem there is, those are going to keep happening. And we know that those are going to keep happening. So what can we do to improve our communication and with each other? And how can we, stay at least in a good place, if not a healthy place together? How can we uplift each other and help each other through those stresses without going into these terrible feelings of kind of like fighting and confrontation with each other? Because that doesn't lead anywhere. And, it's okay to not agree on something. How do we talk through those things without getting to that point of being so frustrated with each other?
Well said.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how we started out talking about your commitment to making a positive influence and to leading with heart and purpose. How have those two foundational pieces helped you with this piece we're talking about right here with your partner?
That's a good question. Yeah, I would say from day one, when we started, I made that, from my perspective, I had to make that very clear. I was like, if I'm going to do this, like, no matter what I want to do in my life from this point forward, I'm trying to do it with, has to be something that has purpose. So this is a billboard company that doesn't innately have like big purpose and everything, right? But I just made it clear from day one, hey, I want to make sure that we're doing something positive and good and giving back and like figuring out how to, go down that B Corp road and, that kind of mindset. And luckily, I mean, partially why we did this is he was in alignment with that. And so we're both from here. We actually went to high school together, and he has a lot of family and community here. And we have a lot of mutual friends and things like that, which sometimes can be really challenging and you don't want to mess that up. But that has been a bond and something that ties us together at the end of the day. And I think that, in relation to your question, whenever some little thing or big thing is stressing us out and we're having a hard time with it, or when our communication is bad, I think that both of us deep down know we're doing something awesome. We're doing something positive, and we've made an impact along the way, and we want to keep doing that. And so that helps us like, whoa, let's bring it back now. Like, at the end of the day, we're trying to be successful and do something great and make an impact. So this thing doesn't matter as much as all of that. And we have friendship and family and community together. So it's very important for us to make sure that that's healthy and we don't damage that. Because, we've all heard, like, don't go into business with friends and family. Like, sometimes it can work, sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, it can be pretty devastating.
Yeah.
And so I think we've had enough conversations about how important all of that is to kind of help us get through our rough patches of, trying to work together on all these different things and not having a team that we've built out yet. Right. I mean, we have team, but we're still developing, of course. So
that's great. That's great guidance. I love hearing that because it's real. So let me take it to a different place because I'm really curious about this. So if I'm a customer, potential customer, and I want to launch a campaign that is totally out of alignment with your purpose, with the B Corp mindset and everything that you've passionately talked about, what happens?
Yeah, I mean, it's challenging. That stuff comes up for us. We try to stay away from certain categories. So that kind of is an easy cop out sometimes. So even though, maybe on one end of the spectrum, we would want to do a campaign, like say it's political. We don't do political advertising right now. A lot of outdoor advertising companies do political advertising, and you can get good money from that. If my business partner and I are aligned on how we think and where we want to go in the world and direct, but so if something comes along that's political that we're aligned with, yeah, sure, we'd be more inclined to want to run that. But if it's on the opposite end of the spectrum and we totally aren't aligned with that, we don't want to turn that down and have some issue rise up or even a lawsuit because, oh, well, you ran them, not me. Like what, so our policy right now is no political. So that's one example of, But if it's an independent person that wants to do something crazy and wacky that we're super uncomfortable with, we'll just let them know and we'll turn it down because and we'll give some reasoning and hope that it doesn't backfire. That's really the best we can do. But it doesn't happen often, but it has happened, and we have had to turn down campaigns. Or sometimes it's we have property owners that we work with, and certain stuff has to pass through them as well. So sometimes that's a kind of filter for us where it's like, hey, the property owners aren't aligned with running this campaign. Like one example is PETA. PETA.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they run some kind of, they run some kind of intense campaigns. They might put visual imagery up that, and they ask, hey, do you have any locations that would approve this artwork? And so sometimes we have run some PETA, but we have also turned down some PETA just because it's too much. We don't want to take that on right now. And so that's a challenge though. It's something that, we have some policies in place, but there's some curveballs that come our way, and we just have to deal with it as we can and try not to do anything that we think will be really unpleasant for people to see it,
Yes, and again, I'm like tying it back to a listener who's involved in a business that's not a B Corp. I think they're faced with, maybe not regularly, but I think they're faced with similar challenges in prioritizing mission in there among profits. Because if your business, Abe, if Grapevine were 100% profit based, you take the business and you deal with the fallout. You let the chips fall where they may. And sometimes that cost can be significant, right? I think that's a challenge that businesses today have. And I think sometimes CEOs underestimate the cost. I think the cost of taking everything, the cost of putting profits ahead of mission. It may look good for the bottom line.
Yeah.
But I absolutely, Leb and Patsy and I, we're obviously big on culture. We've talked about culture in a myriad of our episodes.
Yeah.
That does have an impact on the culture, because your culture is made up of people who more and more are mission driven. They do want work with purpose. And when they see their own employer potentially putting profits over maybe a sound decision, that ripples through the culture, and that
Definitely.
People are leaving because of it.
For
so
sure.
I think I'm glad you shared that. And that's the challenge to the listener is, don't just dismiss that as, well, that's a B Corp, or that's how he does it. That's not how we do it. That truly should be business today. All business.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that unfortunately for decades now, companies and the people that run companies have compromised their morals and values and what they know in their heart is right, to chase the profit, right? And one example is depleting the ocean, just completely depleting the fish in the ocean for generations to come, just to maximize profits in the short term. And and then some people have their awakening moments, some people don't, but some people make millions or billions of dollars, and then they realize, wow, I just depleted the ocean, I feel terrible. How can I help now? But at that point, it's like, well, okay, and it's great that you want to help now, but really would have been nice if you didn't do that in the first place. And how can we move forward and have, the new wave of business leaders and CEOs make the right decisions to not do that? It's also terrible for the long term. It's great for the short term, but it's terrible for the long term. Like, if you're a fishing company and you deplete the ocean in 2 decades, then what about the next 10 decades? And, and these are real things that are happening right now. I just watched a documentary about how these, large commercial fishing companies completely depleted the oceans, and all these species are extinct now. And so the fishermen were out of work. So they had to figure out how to pivot. And so it was about this one guy who went and figured out how to do kelp farming, because kelp sequesters carbon. It's completely regenerative. It's highly nutritional. There's all these benefits, and just transitioned to that because he couldn't fish anymore. That company he worked for raked in all the money, and who knows what they're doing, but they're not able to just keep raking those same profits because they depleted the resource. So that's that whole regenerative, back to the regenerative thing. How can we do this for hundreds of years, thousands of years, rather than just kind of taking what we can right now and leaving the next generation kind of screwed? Yeah, I think there's been a lot of, in the evolution of business and leadership and CEOs, and, there's been a lot of compromising one's values and morals and going against what your heart and gut are telling you, for whatever reasons. But, it's kind of like an addiction to chasing the profit, or like, we have a fiduciary responsibility to maximize profit for shareholders is like one of the most dangerous statements that's ever been created and implemented. And, the whole B Corp philosophy, but really, it's so people don't have to feel like they have to become a B Corp. Really, it's just, how do we maximize profits while helping people on the planet and not compromising those things in our process? And, how do we balance these things together and create longevity, and also attract and retain high quality talent that's going to be happy and dedicated to working with us, rather than just trying to turn and burn and have people kind of, the whole soul sucking thing, it's like, that really comes from people just putting in their time and energy into something, getting a paycheck, but not feeling like they're making a difference in the world. And we all want to make our, people proud and, do something fulfilling. We also have to pay rent and all that stuff. So how, when you can marry the two together and you can be successful and make a positive impact, that's not always going to happen by working for a nonprofit, unfortunately, at this point, as far as like becoming successful or, making enough money. I wish that was the case for teachers and, nonprofits and everything, but, yeah. So how do we change our business models, and how do we change the way we lead our people? And, how do we change, I think like I keep mentioning, I mean, there is a major shift in the mindset of younger people going into the workforce, where they're just like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go work for some company just to get a paycheck. And I'm not going to compromise my morals and values, because now we have all these documentaries and information about where that has led us to our current state, and how that's just not going to work in the long run,
Yeah. Abe, let's take it to Portland, since Portland's the community and, your home base of this particular business. Portland has been going through a lot, right? Everybody knows it. Been going through a lot over the last 2.5, 3 years. And, just as an example, I know that you have to work with the city for permits. And that, I'm sure, at times gets frustrating.
I was going to say that would be my other what frustrates me is all the challenges and loopholes and the controlled industry that we're in.
Yeah, right. So because I have a little bit of backstory on this. Talk about the importance of relationship, even when you're working in a dysfunctional community or a city that is highly stressed by the kinds of issues that Portland has been stressed by, and yet you have to live out, like that value of caring and relationship, and it actually weaves itself into the way you do your business. And I am thinking of the permitting piece, and I think it's worthy for you to talk a little bit about the relationship value.
That's a good thing to bring up. I would say that our whole approach, no matter who we're connecting with, working with, it's always to focus on good communication and how to build a good relationship and how to be friendly and be someone, how can you be somebody that people like to hear from, people like to connect with, even if it's just like, a permitting thing. It's kind of, there's not a lot of like, there's not a lot of connection there sometimes, but how can you be friendly and positive and reasonable and not get mad and cause problems, because you have to continue working with these people. And, not only is it just the right, good feeling thing to do, but it also benefits you if you can keep your cool and figure out how to actually make some kind of connection with somebody that, I mean, at the end of the day, we're all people and we all have all these, struggles and challenges. And for somebody like in permitting, I mean, they deal with upset people all the time, and it takes a toll on them, like they suffer from that. And so I've seen that firsthand when we used to be able to go into the Bureau of Development Services, and you can hear people grumbling and, oh, I'm spending my time here, and you can hear people like getting upset and being short with people, or like kind of being rude, and I don't know, it feels terrible to be that way, even if you're feeling that way, It's like, it doesn't feel good to project that onto somebody where sometimes it's not even in their control. And that's a whole nother thing, is like, there's so many things that it's like, this is a policy that was put in place and they have to operate based on those rules and policies. It's not like they're just making a decision based on what they want to do, and that's something that became clear to us early on, was like, somebody who's passing our thing through the permitting process, they're going down a checklist and they're doing their best. And we want to put ourselves in a position where wherever there is leeway, or wherever there is like, you can work on our project. And, we want them to feel like, I want to pass this through for these people. I want them to be happy with this end result. We want to do our best to try to position ourselves in that way. Cause you might as well, right? I mean, might as well try to position yourself to have some kind of pleasant interaction, and sometimes like I'll email somebody from permitting and just be like, hey, how's your day going? And, I just did this fun adventure to this place or that place. And, how's your summer going? Things like that. And sometimes they'll be like, oh, summer's going great. Thank you so much for asking. Cause I'm sure so many times people are just like, we need our thing. Where's our thing? And, and sometimes they're kind of just like, yeah, whatever, here's your thing, like they don't respond to the, but I think deep down it helps, It feels good. It feels better anyway from my standpoint.
I was going to say, at least half of you benefits, right?
Yeah. Like sometimes, business can get really like dry and kind of, just kind of boring like that. And with, hey, I need this thing, but.
Abe, do you have an ongoing vision for Grapevine, like, 5 years, 10 years from now, maybe even longer? I'm sure you and your founding partner talk about things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we're living into our vision right now, which, I mean, we're the first they call it an outdoor advertising provider, because we're providing the platform to the advertisers. So we're the first outdoor advertising provider to, become B Corp certified and to be 1% for the Planet members. Those are just two examples of us living into that vision of like, wanting to be a shining example of how in our industry, you can create a business model that works well, that is that triple bottom line, the people, planet, profit focus, and how that can work well. And, I wouldn't say that we want to become the largest outdoor advertising company in the country or in the world. That's currently not our vision or mission, but we want to be an example to and have an impact on. And, we want to be noticed for what we're doing by the other companies. So who knows what can happen with that. And that's already kind of rang true, because the number 2 largest outdoor advertising provider in the country has contacted us and had meetings with us and has told us, hey, we've talked about your company to our CEO. Because we go around the country trying to acquire all these smaller outdoor advertising provider companies. They were talking to us about acquiring us at the time. And, we go around the country and talk to all these companies, and no one's doing what you're doing. It's very unique, and it's very intriguing and appealing because, we're trying to figure out how we can have a bigger impact. And they're a publicly traded multi-billion-dollar company, so it's just cool to hear that, like, wow, we were mentioned to the CEO of this huge company, and that's our mission. How can we help transform the industry, the whole industry, to be a force for good, not just our little company,
That's awesome.
We're such a drop in the ocean, they have thousands and thousands of billboards, and we have 25 or something. They just bought the Portland market. So this one company, which is, again, second largest in the whole country, owns over 90% of the Portland market.
Wow. So in addition to you being a B Corp, what do you think that second largest, company is telling the CEO about your unique value proposition?
I think they mentioned us to the CEO as a unique company that they came across, that is super focused on community and giving back locally and working with community organizations, and people and companies, and how they're being successful at it, how they're surprising people by getting these advertising platforms and doing things that people would think you can't just start a new company and do that. So a lot of people say we're scrappy, and we are. We're creative, strategic, and scrappy, and we find these diamonds in the rough kind of situations, which I don't know how many more we can find or what's going to happen. But to have, and who knows if that CEO or that executive team will even think about it much more than being mentioned, but maybe they will. And if it has some even subconscious impact to where they're like, okay, well, how can we do better, and how can we learn from this young new company about how to get more involved in community in a genuine way. They have a whole like ESG report, and like an impact report, and they're doing things that's which is great, but there's there's a lot of room for improvement, and unfortunately at this point, to my understanding, it's almost impossible to be a publicly traded company and become a B Corp. I think there's maybe one or two, but it's kind of contradictory to have a fiduciary responsibility to maximize profits and to have a triple bottom line. So, it kind of has to, you have to make the case for, well, having a triple bottom line is going to increase our profit. And that is true for a lot of companies. Patagonia is going to get more customers because they do so much good.
Right.
So that's a whole growing reality.
They're also going to attract a different type of investor.
Impact investors, or just different investors that want to put their money into something that makes a difference.
Yeah.
And employees, so I think it's harder to make that case, I think, but it's possible.
Yeah. That's good.
That's great stuff.
It is.
So any other questions for Abe before we let him off the hot seat and maybe get practical?
Keep him on the hot seat. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm good.
I think that's time to let's get practical.
Okay. All right. So listener, this is the point in every episode where we want to give you something or some things that you can begin to think about, that you can implement in your business tomorrow to start making inroads in the area that we covered today. We covered several. So Abe, we'll kick it to you. We'll let you go first. When you're thinking about our listener, our CEO, who is perhaps well versed with B Corps before this episode, or now has a little bit more understanding, or is curious, wants to make a difference in their community, what 2 or 3 things would you suggest? Where should they start?
Well, one thing that I mentioned and will reiterate is to just check out the impact assessment on bcorporation.net. Just check it out, play with it, look at a few questions, maybe even dive deep. Just see what you can learn from it, because there's valuable lessons and things to learn from that. And that's a practical, tangible thing that people can do. A few minutes here or a few hours there, up to you, but see what happens.
Yep.
I think another thing that I'm still working on. I think we're all constantly working on this, but it's one thing to like I say, like purpose driven, and we're purpose-driven company. I'm leading with heart and purpose, but I'm still fine-tuning. What does that even really mean? So I think that, finding purpose and bringing it into what you're doing, no matter what you're doing, like, how do I want to make a positive impact, which can change sometimes. Maybe I want to help the ocean this year, or help the forest that year, or help people in my community. Just, if you don't know some kind of purpose-driven thing that's coming from your heart, try to figure that out. It really helps a lot on the day-to-day, especially when things get stressful and hard, and you're like, okay, well, I'm doing all this hard work and making all these sacrifices because I have this mission and this purpose in mind that's not just money motivated. I think another thing is just to make sure to bring some joy and enjoy time with your people. I think, a lot of times business can get stressful, and people, get kind of heated with each other. And I think it's just really important to share the wins, celebrate the wins, have some fun together when you can, and, create some positive memories. Like my business partner and I, we have to go, or we're going to this conference in Bend for our industry, and we're like, let's take 3 days and just explore Bend, and go rafting and just have some fun and just enjoy some time together as friends, because we spend so much time as business partners.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
That's great.
That's good.
Good stuff. All right, who's going?
I'll go.
Yeah. Take
Okay.
it away.
Let's get practical. Lean into problems. Right. Too easy to duck them, lean away, deny them, lean into them. That was one of the things I heard Abe talk about. Learn more about other business models. And in this case, we talked about the regenerative business model, or the B Corp business model. There are things happening, and I think a lot of what's happening is being really emphasized by younger people. So be a lifelong learner along with that. I also, it sounds kind of basic, but treat each person the way you would like to be treated, right? And even when they're in a bureaucracy that's challenging, or you're trying to get something that is slowed down, it may not be because of that person. So it's create that relationship and lift their day. And the last thing I'll just say is think long term. It's, we're all very caught up in the immediate. What's beyond the windshield, or the bug on your windshield. So I'm done.
Awesome. Patsy, you want to go, or you want me to go?
I want you to go.
Okay. All right. Well, this one is just for me and Patsy. What I think the biggest takeaway I have is that for the last 35 episodes, we've had the wrong Tannenbaum on the team. So that's for us.
We got 6 more.
You do have quite the bird, don't you?
You got a tribe.
Okay. All right. Okay. So in all seriousness, I love this. and I don't remember if I think it was you, Abe, or Leb. But here's the kind of the question for the listener. Look, if a billboard company can operate with heart and purpose, then your business has no excuse. I mean, like, there's no reason that you can't do the same thing. If Grapevine has figured out how to do it in an industry where no one else has done it, then you're proving it can be done. So any listener out there who's thinking, well, our industry, no one in our industry is doing it, it can still be done. That was first. Putting mission ahead of profits, or at the very least in line with profits, is going to be challenging. It's hard, but there's absolutely a cost of putting profits above what's morally right and good. You talked about that, Abe. And more that impact, part of that impact of putting profits above what's right and good is a collateral damage to your culture. And that's just something for a company to keep in mind. Yeah. Abe, when you were talking about, you said no matter what the external thing is, no matter what the issue is or the problem is, those things are going to keep happening. But the most important thing is to stay in constant communication with your team, with your partnership, as a listener, with your leadership team. The issues are going to keep coming. You're going to solve the ones in front of you. You'll have new ones. So stay in constant communication with your team, and that's how you get through it. And then the last one, and then I'll throw it to you, Patsy. You don't need to be a B Corp to focus on people and planet and profits. You can be a missional company and still be what might be known as a traditional company. Just be dedicated to the mission. And Abe, you said this, be dedicated to the mission and the money will follow. And I love that we had two real life examples, Patagonia and Ben & Jerry's, and I would argue Grapevine. So let's say three examples of how you can do that and still be a profitable company that people notice. And that does, it makes you more attractive to today's worker. We talked about it, attracting and retaining talent. That's huge for the frustrated CEO. So you don't have to be a B Corp to be able to impact people, planet, and profit. Yeah. Patsy, what do you got?
Okay, let's see. One of the first things you suggested is good communication and follow through are really critical to managing the client's expectations. Seems obvious, but it's not.
Common sense isn't always common practice.
Well, that's a good one too. You just added another one there.
That's awesome.
So then kind of the opposite of that is take a look at the community where you operate, where you do business, and ask yourself, what can I do to help? What can I do to make a difference in my community? That one brings tears to my eyes. So I'm happy to say that one. And let's see. Building honest, open relationships is really foundational. Patrick, you may have said some version of that, but regardless of what situation you find yourself in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know the last one is know your unique value proposition. I love that you just you're strategic, you're creative, and you're scrappy. That kind of summed it up. So I think the more that we can actually have that easy at hand is really important for anybody, regardless of what business you're in. So that's mine for today.
Agreed.
Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome.
Anybody, you want to add any more? No,
I think that's great. Yeah. I didn't think of that as my unique value proposition, but now I'm going to write that down. That's just came off the cuff, but that's good.
That's great. Abe, if someone is interested in contacting you to learn maybe more about becoming a B Corp, or if they're interested in working with you and Grapevine, how should they contact you?
If you go to our website, grapevineoutdoor.com, my phone number and general email that goes to me is there. Or if you share, I don't know if you're going to share my contact info, but the website has it. So It's a pretty straightforward, basic website. With contact info.
Excellent. And I'd say, as a listener, if you're stumbling across this episode in 2023 or beyond, still check out the website, even if you're outside of Portland, because I think by then Grapevine will be probably nationwide. Right? That's where you're going. So.
Yeah. I really believe in the whole, movement, using business as force for good. If somebody just wants to reach out with questions about, the B Corp or whatever else, it doesn't have to be inquiring about getting a billboard. That's great too. But, I'm happy to connect with people and share anything I can to be helpful. I have a lot of resources and stuff I've learned because I've been diving into this stuff. So, happy to help.
It's great. Leb, would you like to thank our guest?
Abram, thank you so much for educating us and keeping us, offering so much value, so much to talk about, so much to think about, and just being the wonderful human being that you are. So thank you.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
And I'll see you soon.
Yay.
Excellent. Well, listener, we've come to the end of another episode. You can download this episode's Let's Get Practical directly from our website, thefrustratedceo.com. You can find that one as well as all previous episodes, Let's Get Practicals. Please don't just listen and think this was interesting, very cool, and then forget it. Our heart, we also want to be a force for good. So if anything moved you today, then please start taking some of these steps that we've put into the Let's Get Practicals and implementing them into your business. If you haven't already connected with us on LinkedIn, just do a search for The Frustrated CEO, and then please do connect with us. You can connect with Leb and Patsy and myself individually as well. We'd love to hear from you if you have ideas for future episodes. If you'd like to be a guest on an upcoming episode of The Frustrated CEO, by all means, reach out to one of us, any of us, all of us. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know how we're doing. And I think that's it. Anything else for the good of the cause?
We got it.
Good.
Good.
Well, thank you all
so much. Yeah, thank you.
I really appreciate it. That was
Great.
fun.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. And we'll see you, listener, again next time on the Frustrated CEO podcast.
All right.